Welcome back to Godless Reads, the Showing Tales for Dark Night show where different godless authors read their own story. I'm Drew Stepek, owner of Godless, dirty old man, piece of shit, loser, homeboy, goofball, freak. This week on Godless Reads, we bring you Sean Hawker and his story, Adult Baby. I know people are going to come back to me and say, this is pornography, this is disgusting, this is totally gross and unacceptable for YouTube. You might not think this is a horror story to begin with, but trust me, when you get to the end, you're going to be terrified. Though Adult Babies might seem pornographic and really gross, it's more about desperation and isolation and loneliness. If you haven't checked out Godless.com recently, go ahead and do it. Go to Godless.com or download the Godless app. You know what to do, Godless fans. Kick back, grab your drug of choice, and let Sean Hawker introduce you to his adult babies.
Adult Babies by Sean Hawker. Opal gritted her teeth as Roger sucked hard on her large pendulous purple tit. She tried her best to ignore the sharp stabs of pain shooting into her chest, and as he lay in the crook of her numb arm, gently caressed his bald, clammy head. The 45-year-old civil servant was already 10 minutes over his allotted time. His snorts and grunts more closely resembled the noises of a piglet with severe mental retardation than that of the 2-year-old child he was pretending to be. She always endeavoured to show her regular punters a good time. Roger was one of her most long-standing and considerate clients. He visited twice a week without fail during his hourly lunch breaks, always left a generous tip, and allowed Opal a fair degree of creative control over their scenarios. He was single, made her laugh with his self-deprecating humour, and had the bluest eyes Opal had ever seen. And more importantly, it didn't take much to make him come. "Time's up, love," Opal said. The bold man murmured something unintelligible while still latched onto Opal's flesh orb. "What did you say, love?" More muffled sounds reverberated against her tender skin. "I didn't hear what you said, Roger. Speak up." She bit down on her lower lip as her rubbery nipple popped out of the sweaty man's mouth. "I said 5 more minutes. You've got a good flow." "Sorry, can't do, love. You've already gone into overtime. I've got 2 more clients this afternoon, and I'm dying for my lunch." Roger frowned. A bead of sweat clung to the tip of his nose. The fact that it didn't fall annoyed Opal. She brushed it away with her hand. "We can carry on tomorrow. Don't you need to return to work? Everyone in your office will be wondering where you disappeared to." Roger silently slipped his hand into the front of his nappy and squeezed his cock as hard as he could. His eyes immediately welled up with tears. "No, Mummy, please. Rog is still thirsty worsty for his Milky Wilky." Opal was used to this sort of manipulation. For months she'd provided her services to grown men who liked to pretend they were babies. And during that time, she'd encountered a whole gamut of weirdos. She couldn't quite understand how, or if indeed if, they genuinely believed they were babies, and whether it was a form of self-deception or not. Though Opal's breasts produced no milk, men like Roger were adamant they'd had their fill of her mammary nectar before returning to the world of adulthood. "Mummy said no, Rog. Time to call it a day." Roger sighed. "Okay, Opal. Will you do one last thing before I go?" "What, love?" "Change my nappy. I did a big poop. I got a dirty bum." Roger peeled off the strips of sticky tape either side of his disposable nappy, let the front section fall forward. His flaccid, wrinkled prick and balls were buried deep in brown sludge. For a second, Opal thought he stored a chocolate bar in his underwear, forgotten about it, and the sludge was melted dark chocolate. Then the odour rose up from his groin and smacked her in the face. Now, she'd changed dirty nappies before, but nothing as tragic as the mess which greeted her now. The fecal catastrophe was on another level. Roger's nappy was a murky swamp of foul-smelling shit, and his buttocks wallowed in it. Opal needed Roger gone, so she reluctantly nodded her assent. He grinned and rolled into the doggy position. The shit caused the nappy to stick to his arse cheeks. Opal held her breath and very cautiously peeled the material from his rear to avoid any specks of human waste befouling the bed sheets. She rolled up the soiled nappy, stuffed it into a crumpled plastic bag down by the side of the bed, and tied the handles in a triple knot. The sour pong lingered in the air. She'd need to get some air freshener spray to clear out the stench before her next client arrived. Opal grabbed a new packet of wet wipes from the bedside drawer. Now she dabbed at the thick, vertical block of shit mixed with arse hair running the length of his crack. A silver object glistening around his anus was gradually revealed. When enough fecal debris was removed, Opal realized it was a ring, partially protruding out of his puckered sphincter. It had been held in place by shit, sweat, and Roger's tense sphincter muscles. Roger looked over his shoulder at Opal. "Surprise," he said. "What the..." Before Opal could finish her sentence, Roger's arsehole dilated, and he farted out the ring. It landed on the bed, in the space between his parted knees. Opal stared at the piece of jewellery, speckled with black flakes of shit, having forgotten what she was going to say. "Will you marry me, Opal?" Roger asked. Opal was speechless. She raised her eyes from one ring to another. The creased, crusty brown poop hole winked at her. "It's an engagement ring, Opal. Roger, please say yes." There was desperation in his voice. "I'll wipe you up, love, and you can be on your way." Roger lowered his head. Even though she couldn't see his face, Opal heard him quietly weeping. She used the entire pack of wet wipes to clean him up, whilst he buried his face into the pillow. He put on his grey work trousers, buttoned up his white shirt, then slung the tie around his upturned collar. Avoiding eye contact, he kissed Opal on the cheek and left the bedroom. She heard him dash down the stairs. The lock buzzed and the front door slammed shut. Opal's eyes drifted to the spot on the bed where Roger guffed out the silver band. He'd forgotten to take it with him. Opal wondered if she'd see him again, since she'd rejected his marriage proposal. Probably not. That was how it was with clients. You built a relationship with them for an indefinite amount of time by indulging in their most intimate fantasies, then you parted like strangers. Opal wandered over to the makeshift kitchen area in the corner of the bedroom. It consisted of a small humming fridge and an electric tea kettle resting on top. She dumped the plastic bag containing the shit-filled nappy into the bin and opened the fridge door to retrieve her cheese and pickle sandwiches. Tony pressed his thumb on the doorbell and kept it there several seconds after a crackling female voice came through the intercom. "Hello, can I help you?" "It's Tony, I got a date with Opal, let me in." "One moment, please." Tony's leg trembled as he stood in the cold. His face flushed despite the chilly breeze fluttering around his ears. He hated waiting at the front door where anyone could be watching him. He felt like a twisted pervert. His finger jammed at the doorbell again. "Hello," came the same crackling voice. "Let me in," Tony urged. "She's expecting me." "Please wait a moment, sir. I need to confirm your booking." "For fuck's sake," Tony muttered to himself. He cracked his knuckles, stuffed his hands in his coat pockets, and pulled his hands out again. Finally, Tony heard the mechanism unlock, and he pushed the heavy door open and disappeared inside the nondescript three-story terrace building. Opal was occupied in the ensuite bathroom, wresting an abortive pickle from her teeth with a toothpick. Roger's silver ring sat in a soap dish, hooked to the tiles above the sink, clean and free of shit flakes. Her concentration was interrupted by a rap on the bedroom door. She discarded the toothpick, leaving the pickle piece where it was, and hurried across the room to flip the latch. It didn't matter about the pickle anyway. She never kissed on the mouth. Her clients disliked that sort of thing. It didn't conform to the rules of their infantile fantasy. Kissing ruined the verisimilitude of their mother and baby time, though wanking and rectal stimulation were allowed. Opal didn't mind about the lack of kissing. She didn't particularly want to make out with a fully grown adult man wearing an oversized nappy, even for money. She opened the door, which was painted a bright shade of princess pink. Tony stood in the doorway, attempting to appear suave and cool by leaning against the frame. He winked. "Hello, Opal. How you been?" His gruff baritone was as chipped and flaky as the paint on the door. Opal responded with a closed-mouth smile. She wasn't particularly enamored with Tony. His lanky physique, topped with a big, round, shaved head, made him look weird and creepy. He resembled a lollipop wearing pedo glasses, a pair of double-bridged spectacles with a wiry steel frame and thick, shiny lenses. They'd had only a couple sessions together, which weren't anything atypical as far as adult babying went. But if ever there was a person who embodied the look of a fetishist, it was Tony. "Only 15 minutes today. Got the kids in the car." Opal raised an eyebrow. She wasn't sure whether they were his children or ones he'd kidnapped. If she happened to glance at a newspaper one day and found out he was a kiddie fiddler as well as an adult baby, she wouldn't be surprised. "That's fine, love. Come in." Opal moved aside and Tony entered. "My missus decided to go visit her sick mother in hospital. Stupid bitch had herself a stroke. Daft cow. It was a bad one too. Completely spazzed her out. Now I'm stuck chaperoning the kids until she comes home tonight. Before I waste my day with the little bastards, I need you to help me. Relax." Opal caught a whiff of Tony as he shifted past her. He smelled particularly ripe today, like a laundry hamper full of tramps' clothes that hadn't been emptied for months. He unravelled out of his coat and draped it over a chair. "How come your rates have gone up? Cara at the front desk said it was £60 now for a quarter of an hour. I almost refused to pay and walked out. For that price, I could get a 30-minute suck and swallow at the whorehouse down the road." What a tosser, Opal thought. After wiping Roger's shit-caked ass and a no-show, she wasn't in the mood to haggle over the cost of her services. Tony's stinginess was enough to push her over the edge. This job was supposed to be only a short-term solution to a payday loan. 7 months in and she was still chipping away at her debt. Servicing adult babies didn't seem like a bad idea initially. She didn't need to sell her pussy or use her mouth. Apart from hand relief and prostate play, all that was required was acting as a surrogate mother to a bunch of inadequate, pathetic males who couldn't come unless they imitated a baby. But the Thai massage parlor doesn't cater to your more special requirements, love. Anyway, Tony huffed, can we get on with it? I told my kids I was popping in to visit a mate. Nosy fuckers take after their mum. I wouldn't have to sneak around like this if we'd had them aborted. Suppose it's too late for that now, right? Sure, love. Strip off and lie down on the bed. Tony whipped off his shirt, trousers and shoes. He reclined on the mattress, then bounced up and down a couple of times to test its springiness. Tony lay there in a pair of sport socks, his bifocal eyes fixed on Opal's bust, partially revealed under her dressing gown. Tony preferred cloth nappies to disposables. Better for the environment, he said. The once visibly white material was now stained an ugly yellow, like the tips of a smoker's fingers. The tatty cloth was frayed, held in position by a big safety pin. I bet you're gagging for some of this, Tony said, thrusting his hips up towards Opal. Tell me how much you want my Opal ignored him. They both knew titwanks were not on the menu. So how old are you today, Tony? 6 months, Tony replied, stroking himself. No, 3 months. Okay, baby Tony, ready for mummy's booby? Tony's hand slipped under his nappy. He licked his lips. He murmured. Baby Tony's fucking ready. Opal lay down beside him. She loosened the belt of her gown and a flabby breast spilled out. Baby Tony, do you want to suck on mummy? He gurgled like a happy infant stimulated by the prospect of a bountiful feed. She pushed her cupped tit closer to his lips. Ugh, fuck, Tony groaned. What's wrong? Opal asked. I just came. Both sets of eyes lowered to Tony's crotch. He held up his outstretched hand. His palm was coated in a translucent film of spunk. Strands of jizz dangled between his fingers like webbing. Can't fucking believe it. I never come this quickly. Maybe I'm sick. Opal stuffed her bruised tit into her gown. It's no problem, love. It happens to all men. Not to me, it doesn't. Not to me. Tony began to hammer his crotch with a clenched fist. Opal grabbed his wrist. Stop it, Tony. Said it's fine. Feel free to use the bathroom to clean up before you go. Tony's arm relaxed in Opal's grasp. What do you mean? I've still got... He checked his wristwatch. 13 minutes. You know the policy, Tony, Opal replied. Using her free hand, she pointed to a single sheet of paper laminated and pinned to the wall next to the pink door. 1 ejaculation per 15 minutes. Bullshit! Tony's lips curled in a petulant sulk, and he yanked his wrist from Opal's hand. That's petty bullshit. I'm your customer. It's your job to provide a service I'm 100% satisfied with. You're more than welcome to use the bathroom for the next 13 minutes. Tony furrowed his brow. This is about money, isn't it? Opal remained silent, even though the answer was a resounding, unequivocal yes. Fucking whore. I should make you drain my balls for your wages, you greedy slut. That's it. Get out now, Tony. Take your clothes and piss off. You're barred. I'll make sure Cara never lets you on the premises again. You can't speak to me like that. After a flurry of deep exhalations, Tony thrust his cum-glazed hand at Opal's face. She squealed as the sticky palm slapped against his skin. His hand reeked of cottage cheese marinated in a vat of dog piss. Lick up my mess, cunt! Slurp up my semen! Eat it! Eat! Opal flung her arms around wildly, scratching and clawing at Tony's face. A finger hooked around the temple of his eyeglasses and hoisted them off his nose. He flew across the room, the lenses cracking as they collided with the wall. Tony squinted and snarled. He punched Opal in the boob and grabbed her flailing limbs, forcing them down onto the bed. For a scrawny fella, he was surprisingly strong. He wriggled in between her legs, the metal of the giant safety pin rubbing against her panties. Tony ground his hips into her, intensifying the heady stench of his manky nappy. "Please, Tony, stop this. Think of your kids." A stiff dome suddenly pressed into her answer. Tony was erect, solid as concrete. Opal saw only hate and ridicule in his cold black eyes as he stared down at her. A tear fell from the corner of her eye. "I should rape you to death, you avaricious pig." He pinched his fingers and withdrew something from under the waistline of his nappy. He curled his sinewy fingers around the circular object before Opal could see it. What is it? She wondered. A cock ring, perhaps? Tony raised the item to his lips and stuck it into his mouth. A pacifier. He suckled the rubber nipple as his rigid prick caressed Opal's labia over the top of her panties. Tony scowled whilst the loud, intermittent sucks exacerbated the already tense atmosphere. Opal felt his ghastly fingers knock it off before they fumbled with the safety pin. Tony grunted, annoyed that his fingers weren't dexterous enough to release the pin. As his attention wavered momentarily, Opal squirmed with all the strength she could muster. Tony's hand slipped from around Opal's arm, and she slashed at his cheek with her manicured nails. A bright red stripe formed across his face. Blood bloomed from the wound and dribbled down his stubbled jaw. Tony yelped, spitting the pacifier out of his mouth. He used his spunk-encrusted palm to apply pressure to the gash in his face. The anger quickly dissipated from Tony's face and was replaced by a sullenness bordering on guilt. "What was that for?" Tony said. His bottom lip trembled. Opal, dumbfounded, wrapped herself up in her nightgown and sat upright on the bed, her back braced against the heart-shaped headboard. "What was that for? Are you a ass? You tried to rape me, Tony." "I'm sorry," he said. "I can get a little hot-headed at times. I didn't mean it." "Get the hell out. Let's discuss this. Get our stories straight first." "There's nothing to discuss. You tried to rape me. End of." Tony sweated profusely. He swallowed hard. In the soft red light of the room, he looked even more pathetic. "No, I mean, I didn't," Tony mumbled incoherently. He leaned in towards Opal, his hands raised in surrender. She arched her body backwards in an attempt to avoid being touched. "Opal, listen to me. You can't tell." She lurched to the side and thumbed the flat red button on top of a small black cube-shaped box next to the bed. A frantic buzz sounded from somewhere outside the bedroom. Tony gulped, unsure of what the noise indicated, but whatever it was, it couldn't be good. A burst of heavy steps bounded up the stairs and the bedroom door flew open. A heavy-set woman, easily 6'7", with a shaved head, sprouting stubble dyed bright purple, strode over to the bed and dragged Tony off it and onto the floor, manhandling him as if he were a deflated fuck doll. "Cara, please escort this guy outside. He's never to be allowed in here ever again." "Do I need to phone the police, Opal?" the butch woman bellowed. Opal deliberated for a moment and finally said, "No, just make sure he doesn't come back, ever." Cara nodded. She dragged Tony along the floor with the brute strength of an ogre. He screeched as the carpet burned his skin. Opal sat on the bed shivering. as she listened to Tony being escorted feet first down the stairs and thrown out of the building. He barked and yelled and pounded his fists on the front door. Opal staggered to the window. Feeling light-headed and frail, she gripped the chair for support. Tony's coat was still draped over it. His clothes were strewn on the floor, and his spectacles lay next to the wall. Several chips of broken glass were scattered around the twisted metal frame. She peered out of the window. Tony stood on the top step, scantily dressed in socks and a nappy. The cloth had come undone during his eviction. One flap hung down, exposing a fleshy arse cheek. Parked next to the curb on a double yellow line was a blue saloon, the hazard lights flashing. Opal noticed two adolescent, cherubic faces staring out of the passenger side windows as Tony stamped his feet and yelled obscenities at her and Cara. She scooped up his bundle of clothes, raised the window sash and threw them out. She watched Tony collect his clothes and growl at his confused, terrified children while searching the pockets of his trousers for the car keys. Cara returned to the bedroom without Opal being aware of her presence until she placed a huge hand gently on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Opal," the friendly giant uttered. "I'll walk you home later. You'll be fine." A couple of weeks passed by without incident. After a heartfelt and awkward conversation with her parent, it was decided Opal should knock servicing adult babies on the head. Tears were shed, revelations were made. She'd had to explain to her middle-aged parents what adult babies were. Once she'd clarified the reason for taking the job, her parents were willing to help her pay her debt to the loan company. Opal had to exchange her flat for the spare bedroom in her parents' house to save on rent money. Initially, she was adamant she'd somehow manage on her own by getting another job. In the wake of a dozen rejection letters, Opal decided there was no choice but to move in with Mum and Dad. Dad mentioned it probably wasn't a wise idea to add 7 months hands-on experience as a professional adult baby minder at Jazzy Fox's Filth Shack to a curriculum vitae, but Opal didn't have a wealth of work experience or academic qualifications to fill the page. It was only temporary. Opal repeated this mantra to herself when she experienced a wave of depression in the coming days. It was only temporary. She'd dig herself out of this financial hole and move on with her life to pastures new. She was filling the final day of her notice period when a text message came through on her work phone. It was a number without a contact name assigned to it. Opal glanced at the message. "Hi Opal, I found out about your services online. I am keen to book with you. Have you got 1 to 2 hours free today? Any time is fine. I am an adult baby." She was used to inquiries like this, so she immediately texted a reply. "Hello baby. Yes, I can see you this evening, love. I'm free 8 p.m, so I'll book you in as my last client of the day. Please press the buzzer on arrival and ask for Opal." Opal smiled. He would not only be the last client of the day, but for good. She was about to put the phone down on the bedside table when it suddenly pinged again. The text message read, "That's great, thanks. It might be a tight fit, so I will bring lube. Lol. Kiss." Guys always made subtle sexual jokes and sly innuendos when they sent text messages to Opal. She even brushed this one off more easily than usual, since this was to be the final time she'd have to indulge seedy men with their bizarre, sleazy infant fetish. The policy of no penetration was all laid out in plain English on the Filth Shack website, so whoever this guy was, he would have been made fully aware of what was and wasn't permissible during an adult baby minding session. He may have made the comment in reference to having a dry prick. Opal had seen it before. She'd wanked guys off whose cocks were rough as sandpaper. It would have been presumptuous of Opal to automatically assume the messenger was being lewd, so she simply replied, "Lol, see you soon. Kiss." She put the phone next to the panic alarm and went into the bathroom to freshen up. Murky clouds had obscured the pale moon by 10 to 8. The streetlight directly outside the bedroom window flickered incessantly, struggling to illuminate its small allocated section of the pavement. Opal was showered and in her dressing gown. She lay on the bed. Though she rubbed her hair diligently with a towel, it was still damp. Long wet strands clung to her neck and back. Her mind wandered over all the various positive changes she planned to make to improve her physical and mental well-being starting tomorrow morning. She'd try veganism, join a local yoga class, embrace minimalism. She'd purge herself of all surrounding negativity and toxic people, starting with adult babies. When the wall clock struck 8 o'clock, the front door buzzer sounded. The continuous grating drone murmured along the hallway and up the stairs. Cara unlocked the entrance to let the client inside. Opal sat waiting for the familiar clatter of footsteps on the staircase, followed by a knock on the bedroom door. A thunderous crash, splintering wood, and shattering glass preceded a prolonged commotion of grunts, shrieks, and groans. A brawl was occurring downstairs. Opal slid off the bed and rushed to the door. She pressed her ear to the wooden panel and strained to listen. Was it a drunken thug who'd wandered in off the street causing trouble? A robbery? Her heart thumped in her chest. She rushed to the bedside table and picked up the phone. As her finger bashed the number for emergency services, her princess pink door flew inwards, and a figure barged into the room. Opal spun around. The phone dropped from her ear, landing on the carpet, and her jaw went slack as her eyes beheld a slimy, spindly form with obsidian eyes and a cloth nappy held in position by a big safety pin. Tony? Opal's voice quavered. All the moisture had been sucked from her mouth. He loomed over her, wearing nothing but ghastly, piss-coloured, foul-smelling underwear and tatty socks stained black and full of holes. The bones of his ribcage protruded under his taut, pallid skin, and his chest undulated as he struggled to regain his breath. His flesh appeared slick and shiny beneath the red light bulb hanging from the ceiling. He was covered head to toe in baby oil. In his hand he held a supermarket carrier bag. The ends of 2 French loaves stuck out of the bag. His other hand was hidden behind him. "What are you doing? Where's Cara?" I got to give the giant lesbian credit. She sure was a tough fucker. As for what I'm doing, well, let me tell you, Opal, because of you, my bastard kids grassed me up to their mum. She took the house and car keys away from me. I've been forced to sleep in the bins behind Sainsbury's since she kicked me out. Some pikey stole my clothes and wallet, then returned later and took my phone. I've eaten nothing except stale baguettes and breadsticks the supermarket chucks out at closing time. I'm fucked. I have nothing left. You attacked me, Tony. You were going to rape me. You deserved it, whore. teasing a little baby with your long legs and fat titties poking out of your slutty gown? Well, now I'll show you. Oh, believe me, I'll show you, all right. Lay on the bed. Opal didn't move. Lay on the bed, whore. Tony's hand, hidden behind his thigh, came around slowly to the front. Opal's face blanched with horror as she saw the long, serrated steel blade of a bread knife covered in blood. Oh my God, Kara, lay down! Tony thrust the knife at her. Kara's blood splattered over Opal's face. Opal whimpered as she obeyed Tony's command. Take off your underwear. Are you going to rape me? Opal stuttered. Tony let the bag of bread fall to the floor. He stomped towards the bed, reached under Opal's gown and ripped her panties off. She screamed and concealed her pussy with quivering hands. No, I want you to do your job properly. The way I see it is I still have time owed from my previous session, so here I am. But you know what, Opal? We're both fucked now. We should end it all. Tony drew the bread knife an inch away along his throat, slowly and deliberately. Go, Tony, please. I don't want to die. Tony curled his lips over his teeth. His eyes were cold and callous. Ask me, he snarled. Opal shook her head and furrowed her brow. I don't know what you mean, Tony. Come on, I'm an adult baby. Do your job. Ask me. I'm ready to begin our session, Mummy. You're sick. He glared and gnashed his teeth as he waved the bread knife in front of Opal's face. How old are you today, Tony? The words spilled automatically from her mouth without cadence. It was a question she asked every client at the start of a session, so she could shape her maternal performance according to their preferred pre-adolescent age. I am a fetus. Opal raised her head off the pillow. Huh? I am a fetus, Tony growled. I am a fetus, and I want to be aborted. Tony's voice transitioned from a croaky baritone to a high-pitched wail. He brushed the French loaves out of the way and reached into the shopping bag at his feet. Rummaging around, he pulled out a bottle of baby oil, squeezed the container and doused himself in the clear liquid. Shall I go in head first? He asked. Opal launched herself at the panic button but stopped short, realizing Kara was dead. Tony, frantic, dived on top of her, slashing at her face with the knife. She tried to grab him, but her fingers slipped over his oily flesh. He sank the blade into her chest, cutting at tissue, splitting muscle. Blood pooled on the bedsheets and Opal's fight weakened. As she lay spent and bloody on the mattress, Tony splayed her legs. He gripped the bread knife tightly and rammed the blade. Opal gasped, sucking in air. Tony couldn't squeeze his head inside Opal's mangled shan, so he hacked at her torso instead. He dug his hands into the blood-spattered gape until they met the solidity of breastbone. Then he forced the chest open, revealing the ivory sheen of a ribcage. Gripping the ribs, he twisted and pulled at bones until they snapped. Tony hauled out the exposed innards, heart, lungs, liver, stomach, casting them aside. The viscera sloughed off the bedsheets and splashed onto the carpet. He reached deep into the gory hole and yanked out Opal's glutinous uterus, fallopian tubes and ovaries. The slippery, rubbery organ slivered in between his fingers. The warmth of blood, mixed with the smell of her sex, made Tony's mouth water. His cock went rigid inside his nappy. He rubbed the uterus, over his skin while staring into Opal's glassy, vacant eyes. He teased his nipples with the tissue of her insides and stuffed the uterus down the front of his cloth underwear. It was still warm. The heat felt nice against the air. Tony picked up the bread knife and clambered on top of the bed. He placed one foot into the crude, hollowed-out cavity, then the other, as if he were stepping slowly into a bathtub. Dropping to his knees, Tony clasped Opal's left tit and severed it from her chest. He crammed the nipple into his eager mouth and sucked hard. If this was to be the end, he wanted to die, being comforted by Mummy's breast. Tony curled into a ball inside Opal's eviscerated cadaver. It was a tight fit, just as he told her it would be. Splintered ribs jammed into his hips. He continued to suck the detached boob as the jagged side of the knife found the artery in his wrist, and he sawed into it, feeling the tension and panic ebb away.
Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.